Get ready, Staten Island.
The Ferry Hawks are back at SIUH Community Park July 7th to the 12th for a 6-game series against the High Point Rockers. Tonight, first pitch is at 6:30. It's Thirsty Thursday with $5 Bud and Bud Light drafts. Friday, July 10th, first pitch is at 7 p.m. May the Force be with you on Star Wars Night with post-game kids glow around the bases with special lightsaber training packs.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
Teens share everything. That may include the bacteria that can cause meningococcal disease known as meningitis. Even if your teen's been vaccinated in the past, they could still be missing meningitis vaccinations. Ask your teen's doctor or visit meningitis.com today. Sponsored by GSK.
So yesterday morning, I woke up to the tragic news that Lindsey Graham had passed away overnight. I found out about 5 a.m. I ran downstairs and put on Fox and Friends, the weekend show, you know, Rachel, Charlie, and Griff. And they did wall-to-wall coverage. I got to tell you, my 3 favorite parts of the show were Bibi, because no one loves Israel more than me, Sean Hannity, who's going to join me this morning at 8:50 because I love Sean, and Sean's fiance, who's part of that great trio every morning on Fox and Friends, Ainsley Earhardt. I said, I'd love to get Sean and Ainsley on tomorrow. And sure enough, here she is, Ainsley Earhardt. Ainsley, good Monday morning. Let me start by saying I'm very sorry.
Thank you, Sid. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm honored to come on and talk about our friend. I grew up in South Carolina, and yesterday morning at 3 a.m., Sean had missed a text from Tim Scott, our other senator in South Carolina, and also a dear friend of ours. And around 4 o'clock, Sean said he woke up, and he said, thought, why do I have a missed call from Lindsey Graham? And he checked his messages, and he had several texts from different friends saying that Lindsey Graham had passed away. And Sean, we both are up early with this news and just in shock because Lindsey talked to Sean almost every night, if not every night, and they would talk for a long time about Israel because they both loved Israel too, or do love Israel, and just about politics. And Lindsey Graham, this was his life. People would always say, he's not married, and we would say, no, he is. He's married to his job. He just couldn't turn it off. He loved it. He lived for foreign policy. He lived for South Carolina. He was so proud of our state, loved golfing, and was just the happiest when he was at home. And I talked to his sister and some of his staffers yesterday, and just to tell them we love them and we're thinking about them. And there were tears, and just everyone is in disbelief. He apparently had just come home from this trip to Ukraine, and that's a really difficult trip because it's a 10-hour plane. I mean, there's plane rides, and then there's a 10-hour train ride, and he did this regularly. And so he was complaining of just not feeling very well. He landed at Dulles on Saturday afternoon, went home to watch the soccer game, and was going to do a TV interview on Sunday morning, and then said, if I don't feel well, I'll go to the doctor on Sunday, or I'll call the doctor. But I think I'll be okay. I just need to rest. I'm probably just exhausted from the trip. And at about 8:30, DC Fire and EMS responded to a report of chest pains at his house. And from what I understand, one of his staffers, who he had talked to a few of his staffers that night just complaining of not feeling great, they had called EMS. And then 8:35, they showed up, so it was very quick. And his deadbolt was secured, so they had to force entry and knock the door down, apparently. And then at 8:50, they radioed that CPR was in progress. And I know they tried chest compressions for a long time, and then they just couldn't save his life, Sid.
Horrible. Just horrible. I got to tell you, you got me all emotional watching the show yesterday because, like you said, he wasn't married. He was married to politics, so he had no children. But the story of how he lost both of his parents at a young age and given the choice, to move on, he actually adopted his own sister and raised her. And you spoke to his sister yesterday. She has to be an absolute mess. But what a beautiful story of a man dedicated to family, right, Ainsley?
Yes. She lives in Lexington, which is just a suburb of where I grew up. And it's a great area, and her name's Darlene, and she was only 13 when both of their parents died. As you know, we've all heard this story, and Lindsey was at the University of South Carolina, which is where I went to, and I would always see him. Sean and I would see him at the Carolina games when we would go back home for the football games. And he just loved our team and loved our state. And so he was at USC and would go back and forth to Central South Carolina, or Seneca, which is where his aunt, Berna May, lives. She died 3 years ago. And so his sister, Darlene, went to live with Berna May and her husband. And Lindsey would go back and forth from college to see his sister and help take care of her. And that happened, he was in 1976. So it was almost 50 years ago. His mother was Millie, and she died of cancer. And then 15 months later, their dad died, and he went by the nickname of Dude, and he died of a heart attack. So there were heart problems. And the preliminary findings are showing that he died of an aortic dissection, which is a tear that occurs in the inner wall of the aorta. And so his sister said, we did have heart problems in our family, and she was wondering if maybe it was some sort of a blood clot or something from travel. But she just said, I'm just in utter shock. She said he was my best friend. And, she's now, I don't know if you've ever had to plan a funeral and go through this. It's just a whirlwind, and you're grieving, but you're also trying to make plans, and especially at this level, at such a grand level. He was a senator and represent South Carolina for so long, and it's going to be massive. So many people loved him. And he loved golf. All of his staff was saying that he loved to play the ocean course, which is at Kiowa, which is just beautiful. It's right on the water. And then Yeaman's Hall he loved, and he would play with Trey Gowdy every week. And last night on Trey's show, he got choked up. He said, my friend, I'll see you on the first tee. But he just he loved going up to North Carolina to Cashers and play all the golf courses, the Cliffs golf courses, which are just beautiful up in the mountains, and they overlook the Carolinas. And there was an ad, because Lindsey, as you know, just won the primary, the Republican primary, and his sister was in an ad, and it was such a cute political ad. But she talked about how Lindsey responded the day that their dad died, and she said that Lindsey came running in and he grabbed me and he hugged me, and he said, "I'm so sorry, but it's going to be okay. I'm going to take care of you." And she said, and that's exactly what he did. And so my heart is with her and all the prayers. And I said, Darlene, because I remember when my mom died and my grandparents had passed away, I talked to my aunt, and she said, Ainsley, I just feel like such an orphan. And I said, Darlene, I know you feel so alone. She said, I just feel so alone. She said, we just would talk all the time. He was my best friend. And Lindsey and I were at the state dinner recently, so this is the last time I think I saw him. I know I talked to him since, but we were at the state dinner when King Charles visited the White House, and President Trump and Melania invited both of us, and Sean couldn't go. So I was there with some coworkers, but, I went alone. And Lindsey said he talked to his staff, and his staff said he wasn't sure if he was going to go because even though he's used to politics, you have to wear a black tie. He loves South Carolina. He's like, should I go to Washington? Should I do the state dinner? I'm going to be by myself. And he told his staff, I was so relieved when they sat me next to Ainsley, and I was glad that Melania did that too, because it's a little overwhelming when you're in a room with such big leaders and you might not know who you're sitting next to and you don't know their story. And, you can make conversation, which is something that, is always nice and fun to do. But I was so relieved that Lindsey was next to me because I wanted to catch up with him, and he's one of Sean, my fiance's best friends, and he represents my state, and he always was asking about my parents. And that night, how's your dad? How's he doing? Tell him I said hey. And he actually went, and we laughed, and we said, thank you for being my date. And it was just one of the highlights of my life, actually, being at that dinner. It was just fabulous, and the music was unbelievable. It was all military music, and they played Phantom of the Opera and a lot of Broadway productions, and it was just, they surrounded all the room and stood around behind us and in front of us and just played these beautiful songs. Lindsey and I were in awe, and so I was just nice. That was a nice way to, I had no idea that was going to be the last time I would see him. And then when my mom died, said we had her funeral. And in South Carolina, you have the funeral at the church, but the day before you have the visitation, and that's at the funeral home. And sometimes it's open coffin and open casket, and that's what my family has always done. So my family was standing around the casket, and there was a long line out to the parking lot, and they said it was the second largest funeral they had ever had, and my mom was just loved. And so my mom and dad, just wonderful people. And Dad actually worked part-time at the funeral home, so we had a lot of support. And Lindsey Graham waited in that line. Some people waited for 4 hours, and he just meant a lot to me. He could have just come to the funeral. He could have just sent flowers or sent a little note, but he actually stood in that line and, and gave me a hug and gave Sean a hug and talked to my dad. Just meant the world. He had a really good heart.
Sounds that way. This is the lovely Ainsley Earhardt, part of the Fox and Friends crew. Of course, every morning on Fox News. Spartanburg, South Carolina girl, and clearly very, very close with Lindsey, as was her fiance, Sean Hannity. And I did hear the story you said when you told your father yesterday. Your father said he's dead. And you're like, yeah. And so in the final, I know you have to run, but in the final couple of seconds, and I hate doing this because it's always gut-wrenching and emotional, but if, in fact, you got a trip to heaven this morning for just an hour just to talk to Lindsey Graham, what would you tell Lindsey this morning?
Oh, Sean and I were talking about this. He said, I just want to tell him I'm so mad at you. If you weren't feeling well, why didn't you call the doctor? Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you tell me? It's always, but we always feel that way. I would just say, you are a great man. Thank you for serving South Carolina. Thank you for loving Israel. Thank you for loving America and putting country first. You could have been a millionaire 4 times over, and you chose to love America and take the paycheck of a senator, and we really appreciate it, Lindsey. You were loved, and you love Jesus. You grew up in a Southern Baptist, and now you're with your parents. So have fun and give Jesus a big hug for me, and I'll see you up there soon.
Perfect. Hopefully not soon, okay? Take it easy, Ainsley.
One day.
You're beautiful. You're great. This was a great conversation. Again, my heart goes out to you.
Doug.
Thank you for doing this, Ainsley, and good luck doing 4 hours this morning on this. You're great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sid. God bless you.
God bless you, too. There she is, Ainsley Earhardt, one of the great 3 on Fox and Friends on Fox News every morning. Her fiancé, Sean Hannity, will join us at 8:50 this morning. We'll take a short break. Lots more to do on the untimely and tragic death of our friend Lindsey Graham.
Thanks for listening to Sid and Friends in the Morning. You can hear Sid and Friends in the Morning weekday mornings at 6. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?